And I'm being joined by Alberto Coll, professor at the DePaul University College of Law. Good evening, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Good evening.
So, as we've just seen, emotions do run high. Gestures are symbolic, theatrical. So why? Because honestly, what has happened at the UN, right? The rights of Palestine were sort of expanded, but still they don't have a voting right. So it seems like much ado about nothing.
Well, let's look at the substance really behind all the theatrics and all, which on both sides. So the idea that Palestine should have its own state, okay, is something that has been accepted by many states, including by many Israeli governments in the past, that the two-state solution, even if Mr. Netanyahu is not very fond of it, previous Israeli governments have accepted it. But we need to think very clearly exactly about what it means for Palestine to have a state. Under international law, in order to be a state, an entity has to have a number of things. Number one, it has to have a defined population, which Palestine does. It has to have a defined territory, which Palestine, with the Gaza Strip and the West Bank has. But you need two other things, which Palestine right now does not have. Number one, you have to have one government that can exercise effective control over your territory. And we forget that right now, Palestine is divided into two governments. You have, on the one hand, the Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, has controlled the Gaza Strip since 2007. And then you have the Palestinian Authority, which controls the West Bank. So you would have to have a process by which Palestinians choose one unified government. And that leads to the fourth requirement, which is that government, under international law, has to be able to carry out its international obligations. And that would mean that a Palestinian government representing a Palestinian state would have to pledge itself to recognize the right of its neighboring states, including the state of Israel, to exist, and would have to, as part of its international responsibilities, agree not to allow any attacks from Palestinian territory to take place against its neighbors, including the state of Israel. So these are the requirements. How we get there is a very, very interesting question as well. But we need to understand right now, Palestine does not meet two of the requirements under international law to be a state. Can they get there? Yes, but a number of things will have to happen first.
Right, Professor, but this sort of merits sort of another question, right? If the gesture, if the voting was deeply symbolic and meant to express solidarity with Palestinian people, especially those who live in Gaza, why such a violent reaction? I believe I can use that word, at least a heated reaction, let's say, from Israeli politicians, including Israel's ambassador to Poland, who has harshly criticized Poland for voting in favor of this resolution. So what is your take on that?
Because a lot of Israelis believe that a lot of this is UN theatrics, okay, that this is about ganging up on Israel, that this is about making a point, that this is not about a serious discussion about how to move positively, peacefully, and productively towards the conditions in which Palestine will be a state. And the reason that some countries don't want to have that thoughtful, productive discussion is that they would have to admit that right now Palestine is divided into two governments, both of which have been at each other's throats for many, many years. In fact, the Hamas military killed several thousand Palestinians in the civil war in 2006, 2007, 2008. And that secondly, whichever Palestinian entity would emerge as a state, as a recognized state, would have to pledge itself to recognize the right of Israel to exist, something which a number of Palestinian groups don't want to accept, including, of course, most notably Hamas. So a lot of Israelis are angry and saying, this is a lot of theatrics and we're not having a serious discussion. This is just another way of signaling sympathy for the Palestinian people, but there are many more productive ways to signal sympathy for the Palestinian people. And I think one of them would be to demand that Hamas stop being the entity that controls Gaza and that the Palestinian people be allowed to have a government that actually works for them, that respects human rights, that respects the rights of women, and that respects the rights of minorities, something that the Hamas leadership does not do.
Right, Professor, and since your specialty, of course, is law, let me ask you about the International Court of Justice, right, and what has been established thus far, because with some of the recommendations, Israel apparently did not comply, and sort of I wanted to untangle this whole issue of possible genocide being committed in Gaza. Can we use that word? Can we legally use that word or not?
No,
yet,
absolutely
right?
not. Absolutely not. And the International Court of Justice very specifically has not said that genocide is taking place. The International Court of Justice simply issued a decision saying that Israel should take measures to ensure that no genocide takes place, that it maintain records of all its operational orders, of all its policies, and that it's a factual question, which it will take the court quite some time to investigate whether genocide has been taking place. But the court definitely did not say that genocide is taking place. And people forget, genocide is a crime of intent, okay? There may be Israeli violations of the laws of war taking place. That's another subject. But people have latched onto the word genocide because it's one word, it's a simplistic thing, but it would amount to the court finding that Israel has been targeting Palestinians deliberately and with the intent to destroy them as a people because of their ethnic and national origin. That's a very tall order, and that's why the court has refrained from deciding that and put it off until much later when a lot of facts are going to have to be investigated very, very carefully.
Right, and speaking about the UN and topics such as genocide, we have Serbia and the whole Srebrenica question, right? I mean, Alexander Vučić, Serbian president, is very staunchly opposing that UN resolution. What is your take on this? Is it justified, and why is this narrative so very important?
So Serbia, there was a case before the International Court of Justice over 20 years ago on the question of whether Serbia had committed genocide against Bosnia, against the Bosnian Muslims. And the court very specifically held that Serbia had not committed genocide against the Bosnian Muslims. Nevertheless, the court did find that Serbia violated the genocide treaty by failing to prevent genocide, which was carried out by the pro-Serbian militias under the command of these Bosnian Serb forces. Okay, so two very different things. Serbia did not commit genocide, but Serbia should have tried to prevent these Bosnian Serbs from committing genocide. So the issue has become very, very politicized. But part of the problem is that people have gotten used to throwing out this word genocide as if it means anything. And genocide has a very specific definition. It's in the Treaty of 1948. And the definition is very, very specific. It's a crime of intent. It's like first-degree murder. You have to intend to destroy a people in whole or in part. And it has to be done because of that people's ethnic, religious, racial, or social origin. So I think that it would be more productive to be looking at the degree to which maybe Israeli forces have been violating certain aspects of the laws of war. But of course, that kind of subtlety does not sell as well as carrying little placards that say Genocide Joe and Stop the Gas and Genocide. It's proved to be a very powerful and a very effective propaganda tool.
Right, absolutely. And it doesn't help that usually these discussions are very emotionally charged, and we're not in the courtroom, but I would argue that intent is very difficult to prove and establish. Alberto Coll, thank you, Professor, for being with us this evening and for clarifying some of these issues.
Thank you. Thank you.